Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarech, we will be continuing on in the Rambam's Minyan Hamitzvot, the Rambam's counting of the 613 mitzvahs. We are currently in middle of the Rambam's counting of the mitzvahs Aseh. We are up to mitzvah Pei Daled 84, and we will be continuing now. Mitzvah Pei Daled 84 is Lahakriv Kol HaKarbonis Bebeis HaBchira Shenamar V'Sham Tase Kol Asher Anochi Mitzavecha. That there is a commandment to bring all the karbanos, all the sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash, as the pasuk says, and there you will perform all that I command you. 85. Pei hey li'tapel ba'avas hakarbanos mechutz la'aretz Beis Hamikdash shenamar rak kidashecha asher yul lecha unidarecha tiso uvasa mipyashmu alamdu she'ena medaber ela b'kachei chutz la'aretz. A mitzvah to bring all of the karbanis from the diaspora and bring them to Eretz Yisrael and to the Beis Hamikdash, as the pasuk says. Take the sacred offerings which you possess and your pledges and come to the place that Hashem will choose. And based on the oral tradition, we learned that this applies to the offerings from the diaspora. 86. Pevav. Liftois Kodashim Bali Mumin V'yu Mutarim V'achila Shenamar Rak B'chol Avas Nafshecha Tizbach V'achalta Basar Mipyashmo Lamdu She'ena Medaber Ella B'psulei Hamukdashin Shipadu. That all offerings that have become blemished and therefore are unfit to be brought as sacrifices must be redeemed in order to use them for mundane purposes, as the pasuk says. But whenever you desire, you may slaughter. And based on the oral tradition, we learned that this refers to sacred offerings which have become disqualified and have been redeemed. 87 Peizayin Liyos Hatimura Kodesh Shenamar V'haya Hu Usimurasai Yeh Kodesh. For an animal that is substituted for a sacred offering to be regarded as sacred, as the pasuk says, both, aka the original animal and the one substituted for it, shall be consecrated. Pei Ches 88. Lachol Shiarei Menachis Shenemar V'Haneiseres Mimena Yeochlu V'Aaron Uvanov. For the remnants of the mincha, the meal offering, to be eaten, as the pasuk says, Aaron and his sons will eat the remainder of it. 89. Peitas La'echol Basar Chatas V'Ashem Shenemar V'Achlu Oisam Asher Kufar Bohem Chulu. For one to eat the flesh of the sin and the guilt offerings, as the pasuk says, and they shall eat the sacrifices which atoned for them. 90. Tzaddik Lisreif Besar Kodesh Shenitma Shenamar V'Abasar Asher Yiga B'Chol Tamei Lo Ye'ochel Be'esh Yisaref. For one to burn the sacred meat which became impure, as the pasuk says, and the flesh which touches anything impure shall surely be burnt. 91 Tzadik Aleph Lisreif Noisar Shenamar V'Hanoisar Mibsar Hazavach B'Yom HaShlishi Chulu. To burn all leftovers that passed the time to eat the sacrifices, they shall be burned, as the pasuk says, the leftovers from the flesh of the sacrifice shall be burnt with fire on the third day. 92 Tzadik Beis Legadil Hanazir Sa'arei Shenamar Gadil Pera Sa'ar Reishoy. For the Nazir to grow his hair long, as the pasuk says, he shall let his hair of his head grow without cutting it. Tzadik Gimel 93. Legaleach Hanazir Sa'arei Al Carbon Oisav Bimlois Yemei Nazirai Oy Besoich Yemei Nazirai Im Nitmash and Amar V'chi Yamus Meis Alav V'Gomer. For a Nazir to shave his hair when bringing his sacrifice at the conclusion of his term as a Nazir, or during his term as a Nazir, if he becomes impure, as the pasuk said, should a person die in his presence, V'chulu, aka he must shave. Tzadik Dalet 94. Lakayim Adam Kol Shahoitzi Bisfasav Mikarban Otzedaka V'chayotze Behen Shenamar Moitza Sfasacha Tishmar V'Asisa. For a person to fulfill any promise which he utters, whether that be a sacrifice or a gift to charity or the like, as the pasuk says, what you have spoken, take heed to fulfill. 95. Tzadikei Lodin B'Hafer Nidarim B'Chol Hadinim Ha'amurin B'Parasha, to carry out all the different dins, all the laws when it comes to nullification of the vows, as mentioned in the Torah, which is enumerated in Bamidbar. Tzadik Vav, 96. Liyais kol neigea benevela tamei shenamar v'chiyamus min habehema chulu. For anyone who comes in contact with a corpse of an animal to become impure, as the pasuk says, should an animal die, etc. 97. Tzadik Zayin. Liyais shmoina shratzim mitamin shenamar v'zel lochem hatamei. For the dead bodies of the 8 creepy crawly species that are mentioned in the Torah, they impart impurity, and if you touch them, you shall become impure, as the pasuk says, these shall be impure for you. 98. Tzadik Ches. Liyais ha'acholin mistamin shenamar mikol ha'eichel asher ye'achel v'chulu. For certain foods to impart impurity, as the pasuk says, from all the foods which you will eat. 99. Tzadik Tes. Liyais hanida tamei u mitama la'acherim. For a woman in her nida state to be impure, and also to impart impurity to others. 100. Kuf. Liyais hayeledes tmeya kinida. That a woman in a post-birth state also imparts impurity like a woman in nida state. Liyais hamitzvot tamei umetame. For one who is affected with saras, to be impure and to impart impurity. Kuf Beis, 102. Liyais beged menuga tamei umetame. For a garment affected with saras, to impart and to be impure itself. Kuf Gimel, 103. Liyais bayis menuga metame. For a house afflicted with saras, to impart impurity. Kuf Daled, 104. Liyais hazav metame. One who had an unnatural seminal ejection, to impart impurity. Kuf Hey, 105. Liyais shichva zera mitama. For semen itself to impart impurity. Kuf Vav, 106. Liyais zava mitama. For a woman who has an unnatural ejection, to impart impurity. 107. Kuf Zayin. Liyais hames mitame. For a corpse to impart impurity. 108. Kuf Ches. Liyais me nida mitamin la'adam tar umetarin tumas meis bilvad. A very interesting din we have here, that the water of the red heifer, that it should make any pure person impure, but it makes any impure person from a corpse pure. V'chol elu hadinin shel tumais elu roiv mishpat kol tuma v'tuma mehen mevar b'ter shvechsav. The Rambam now is giving a little background, saying that all these impurities and those that impart impurity, that their sources can be found in the written law. However, it is quite interesting that the Rambam does not give a source like he had until now. Okay, Kuf Tas, 109. Liyais hatahara mikol hatumais betfila b'mei mikvah. For the process of purification from all types of ritual impurity, to involve the immersion in the waters of a mikvah. Shenamar v'rachatz b'mayim es kol b'sarai. That you should wash all your flesh in the water. Kach lamdu mipi hashmua. Sherechitza zoi b'mayim shekol gufay oil behem b'vas achas. And we learn from the oral tradition that this washing is washing one's entire body in water at one time, aka an immersion, a full immersion. 110. Kuf Yud. Liyais hataharam min hatzaras. Bein tzaras adam, bein tzaras bayis. Be'etz erez ve'ezov. Ushni toilas. Ushtei tzfarim. Tziparim. Umayim chaim shenamar zois. Tia teras hamitzvot. For the process of purification from tzaras, sometimes translated as leprosy. Be it a person that has tzaras on himself, or a house afflicted with tzaras. That the process includes a cedar stick, a hyssop, and crimson wool, 2 birds, and spring water. As the pasuk said, this is the process of purification for a person with tzaras. 111. Kuf Yud Aleph. Liyais hamitzayra megaleach kol sa'arei shenamar v'hoya b'yom hashvi yigalach es kol sa'arei. For a person who is afflicted with this tzaras, to shave all of his hair, as the pasuk says, and it shall be on the 7th day he shall shave all his hair. Kuf Yud Beis 112. Liyais Hamitzvot Yadua Lekol Badvarim Ha'amurim Boy Begadav Yu Pirumim V'Roisha Yeh Parua V'al Sofam Ya'ata V'Tamei Tamei Yikra V'Chein Sa'ar HaTameim Tzrichin La'idia Es Atzmon. 4. A person who is afflicted with tzaras to make known his condition to others, according to the instructions mentioned in the pasuk, as it says, his garment shall be torn, his hair shall grow uncut, he shall cover his face to his lip, and he shall cry out, impure, impure. Similarly, all others who are ritually impure must make their condition known. 113, Kuf Yud Gimel, Lasis, Para Aduma, Liyos, Ephra, Muchan, Shenamar, V'Hoisa, La'adas, Chulu. To prepare the red heifer, so its ashes will be ready, as the pasuk says, and it will be a keepsake for the congregation of Israel. 114, Kuf Yud Daled, Liyos, Ma'arich, Adam, Noisein, Damim, Haktuvim, B'Parasha, Shenamar, Ish, Ki, Yafli, Neder. For a person who makes a endowment to give that amount of money, as the pasuk says, when a person expresses a vow. 115, Kuf Tes Vav, Liyais Ma'arich Behema Temeya Noisen Domea Shenamar Ve'amid Es Ha Behema. For a person who makes an endowment concerning a non-kosher animal, he has to give a certain amount of money, as the pasuk says, and he shall cause the animal to stand. 116, Kuf Tes Vav, Liyais Ma'arich Beisoy Noisen Ke'erech Hakayin Shenamar Ve'ish Ki Yakdish Chulu. Someone who gives an endowment based on the value of his house should give the value determined by the priest, as the pasuk says, and the priest shall determine its value. Kuf Yud Zayin 117, Litain Makdish Sadeu Erka Ha'amur B'Torah Shenamar V'im Misneh Achuzasai. For a person who consecrates his field to give the amount determined by the Torah, as the pasuk says, and the value shall attach to it shall be according to the amount of its seed. 118, Kuf Yud Ches, Lahoisif Hamoyel Oy Oichel Truma Chomesh Ala Karen Ulachziroi Shenamar Ve'es Asher Chata Min HaKodesh Yishalei. For somebody who unintentionally makes use of a sacred object to make restitution for that which he misused by adding 1/5 of its value, as the pasuk says, for that which he sinned, he shall pay. 119, Kuf Yates, Liyos Neta Rivoi, Kodesh Shenamar Yeh Kol, Period Kodesh Hilulim. For the product of the 4th year to be sacred, as the pasuk says, its produce shall be sacred. Praise unto God. 120, Kuf Ches, Lahaniach Peah, to leave Peah, which is the corners of the field. Kuf Chaf Aleph, Lahaniach Leket, to leave the leket, which is the forgotten stalks. Kuf Chaf Beis 122, La'aniach Omer Hashicha, to leave the forgotten sheaves of wheat in the field. Kuf Chaf Gimel 123, La'aniach Oilois Bakerem, to leave the incompleted grape clusters in the vineyard. 124, Kuf Chaf Daled, La'aniach Peret Hakerem, to leave the individual fallen grapes. Lefi shebechol elu namar laani velager ta'azoiv oisam, because the pasuk says v'zayhi mitzvah sasei shalahem. The mitzvah, the Torah says, leave them for the poor and the stranger, and this is the positive commandment for all of the above mentioned. Kuf Chaf Hey 125, lahavi bikurim lebeis abchira shenamar reishis bikurei ad moscha chulu, that you shall bring the first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, as the pasuk says, the first fruits of your land. 126, Kuf Chaf Vav, lahafrish truma gedola lakayin shenamar reishis degoncha ti roishcha, for you to separate out the great truma and give it to the priest, as the pasuk says, give him the first of your grain. 127, Kuf Chaf Zayin, lahafrish meiser dagon leviim shenamar v'chol meiser haaretz mizera haaretz, to separate the tithes of your grain and give it to the Levi, as it says, and all the land's tithes. 128, Kuf Chaf Ches, lahafrish meiser sheni leochel levalov Yerushalayim shenamar aser ta'aser eis kol tvuas zarecha v'chulu mepiyash mu'ol amdu shezehu meiser sheni. To separate the second tithe so it could be eaten by its owner in Jerusalem, as the pasuk says, you shall surely tithe. According to the tradition, we learned that this is referring to the second tithe. 129. Kuf chof tes liyos halavim mafrishin meiser min ha-meiser shalokhu mi-Yisrael v'noisin oisel ha-kahanim shenamar v'el halavim tidaber. For the Levium themselves to separate a tenth from the tenth which they got from the Yisrael, and to give it to the Kayin, as the pasuk says, speak to the Levium. Kuf Lamed 130. Lahafrish meiser oni tachas meiser sheni bishlishis uvashishis bishavua shenamar mikze shalish shanim toitzi eskol meiser. To separate the tithe for the poor instead of the second tithe in the 3rd and 6th years and the 7th year. As the pasuk says, at the end of 3 years, remove a tithe of all your crops. 131. Kuf lamed aleph. Lizvadois vidoy meiser shenemar v'amarta lifnei Hashem lekecha bi'arti. To recite a declaration concerning the tithes, as the pasuk says, and you shall declare before God your Lord, I have removed the sacred foods. 132. Kuf lamed beis. Likrais ala bikrum shenemar va'anisa va'amarta lifnei Hashem lekecha. To read a statement when giving the first fruits, as the pasuk says, and you shall respond and say before your God, your Lord. 133. Kuf lamed gimel lahafrish chalo lakayin shenamar reishis arisoisechem chala tarimu. You shall separate challah and give it to the priest, as it says, the first of your dough, the challah, you shall separate as an offering. Kuf lamed dalid. 134. Lahashmit karka shenamar v'hashvius tishmatena unitashta. To let the land lie fallow in the 7th year, as the pasuk says, in the 7th year you shall let it lie fallow and withdraw from it. Kuf lamed hey. 135. Lishbais ma'avodas ha'aretz shenemar b'chorish uvakotzir tishbais, that you shall refrain from agricultural work, also talking about the Shemitah year, the 7th year, as the pasuk says, from plowing and harvesting you shall rest. 136. Kuf lamed vav. Lekadesh shnas yovel b'shvisa kashmita shenamar v'kidashtem es eis shnas hachamishim. To sanctify the Jubilee year, the 50th year, by refraining from agricultural work, just like is done in the Shemitah year, as the pasuk says, and you shall sanctify the 50th year. 137. Kuf lamed zayin. Liskoya ba'shofar b'shnas yovel shenamar v'ha'avarta shofar trua. That you shall blow the shofar in the 50th year, as the pasuk says, and you shall sound the shofar blasts. 138. Kuf lamed ches litain geula la'aretz b'shnas yovel shenamar uv'chol eretz achuzaschem geula titnu la'aretz. You shall free all the land in the 50th year, as it states, for all your ancestral lands there will be redemption in the land. 139. Kuf lamed tes liyos geulas batei arei chayma ad shana shenamar v'ish ki yimkor base. To allow 1 year of a redemption period in any house within a walled city, as the pasuk says, if a person shall sell a residential house in a walled city. Kuf mem 140. Limnois shnei yovel shanim ushmitim shenamar v'safarta lecha sheva shabosais shanim. To count the years of the Yovel and Shemitah within it, as it says, and you shall count 7 Shemitah years. 141. Kuf mem aleph. Lahashmit ksafim b'shvius shenamar shamait kol bal mase yodei. To remit all financial obligations in the 7th year, as it says, every creditor must remit. 142. Kuf mem beis. Lingais lanachri shenamar es hanachri tigais va'asher yel lecha es achicha. To collect debts from a Gentile in the 7th year, as the pasuk says, seek to collect debts from a Gentile. However, what your brother owes you, you must remit. 143. Kuf mem gimel. Litain mina behema lakayin hazraya valechayim v'hakeva shenamar v'nasan l'koyin, to give the shank bone, the jaw, and the maw, 3 parts of the animal, to the koyin, as it says, and you shall give the priest the shank bone. 144. Kuf mem dalid litain reishis hagez l'koyin shenamar v'reishis gez soincha titain loy, to give the first of the shearings to the koyin, as it says, give the first portion of the shearings of your sheep. 145. Kuf mem hey lodun bedine charabim mehem la'ashem ve'em l'koyin shenamar ach kol cherem chulu, to judge property that is dedicated, whether it be dedicated to God or to the priests, as the pasuk says. However, any dedication that will be made. 146. Kuf mem vav lishchait behem achaya v'oif v'achar kach ye'achel b'saron shenamar v'zavachta mibikarcha chulu, to slaughter an animal, beast, or a bird, and afterwards eat their meat, as it says, and you shall slaughter your cattle and your sheep. 147. Lechases dam chayav oif shenamar v'shafach es damai v'chisau ba'afar, to cover the blood of beasts and birds which are slaughtered, as the pasuk says, and you shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. 148. Kuf memchas l'shaleach hakein shenamar shaleach tishalach es ha'em v'es habanim tikach l'cha, to send away the mother bird from her nest when taking their younglings, as the pasuk says, you shall surely send away the mother. 149. Kuf mentas livdaik b'simane behema shenamar zeis hachaya asher teichlu mikol, to check the signs of a kosher animal, as the pasuk says, these are the animals which you may eat. 150. Kuf nun livdaik b'simane ha'oif ad sheyavdil bein tamei shabai letar shabai shenamar kol tzipar tohira teachlu, to check the signs of a kosher bird, to differentiate which one's kosher and which one's not, as the pasuk says, all birds which you may eat. Kuf nun aleph. 151. Livdaik b'simane chagovim leida tarim min atame shenamar asher loy kira'ayim v'chulu, to check the signs of a kosher grasshopper, to know which ones are kosher and which ones are not, as it says, those which possesses jointed legs, extensions, etc., those you may eat. 152. Kuf nun beis livdaik b'simane dagim shenamar es ze teichlu mikol asher b'mayim, to check the signs of a kosher fish, as the pasuk says, these are what you may eat from all that's found in the water, etc. Kuf nun gimel. 153. Lekadesh chadashim v'lachshev shanim v'chadashim bebeistin bilvad shenamar hachodesh hazeh lochem rosh chadashim, to calculate the years and the months, and to sanctify the month in court, as the pasuk says, this month will be for you the first of the months. 154. Lishbais b'Shabbos shenamar uv'yom hashvi tishbais, to rest on the Shabbos, as it says, rest on the 7th day. 155. Kuf nun hey lekadesh Shabbos shenamar zachar es yom haShabbos lekadshay, to sanctify the Shabbos, as the pasuk says, remember the Shabbos day and keep it holy. 156. Kuf nun vav levayer chametz shenamar b'yom harishon tashbisu sa'ar, to destroy chametz before Pesach, as the pasuk says, on the day before Pesach you shall obliterate the chametz from your homes. 157. Kuf nun zayin lesaper b'yetzias mitzrayim b'layla harishon shel chag hamatzah shenamar v'yigaret lebincha b'yom hahu leimar, to tell the story of the exodus of Egypt on the first night of the first Seder, on the first night of Pesach, as the pasuk says, and you shall tell your son on that day. 158. Kuf nun ches la'echol matzah b'layla zeh shenamar be'erev teichlu matzahs, to eat matzah on that night, as the pasuk says, in the evening you shall eat matzahs. 159. Kuf nun tes lishbais barishon shel Pesach shenamar b'yom harishon mikra kodesh, to rest on the first day of Pesach, as the pasuk says, and on the first day it shall be sacred holiday. 160. Kuf samech lishbais b'ashvi b'shenamar uv'yom hashvi mikra kodesh, to rest on the 7th day of the festival, as it says, on the 7th day there will be a sacred holiday. Kuf samech aleph. 161. Lisbar miktiras ha'omer tisha v'arba'im yom shenamar v'safartem lochem v'gomer, to count 49 days from the harvesting of the omer, as the pasuk says, and you shall count the day following the day of rest. 162. Kuf samech beis lishbais b'yom chamishim shenamar ukrasem be'etzem hayom hazeh mikra kodesh, to rest on the 50th day after Pesach, after the 49 days of counting, as the pasuk says, and you shall proclaim a sacred holiday on that day. 163 Kuf Samach Gimel Lishbais Berishon Shel Chodesh Hashvi Shenemar Be'echad LaChodesh Yelachem Shabbosayin. To rest on the first day of the 7th month, as the pasuk says, on the first day of this month you shall have rest. This, of course, talking about resting on Rosh Hashanah. Kuf Samach Daled 164. Lis'anes ba'asiri boy shenemar be'eser lachodesh ta'anu es nafshei seichem. To fast on the 10th day of the month, Yom Kippur, as the pasuk says, on the 10th of the month, you shall afflict your souls. Kuf Samech Hey. Lishbeis b'yam atzoyim shenemar Shabbos Shabbosayin hu lochem. To rest on this fast day, as it says, it shall be the Shabbos of Shabboses. Kuf Samach Vav 166. Lishbais Barishon Shel Chag HaSukkah Shenemar B'Yom HaRishon Mikra Kodesh. To rest on the first day of the festival of Sukkot, as it says, on the first day there shall be a sacred holiday. And Amirat Hashem, we will finish the Minyan Hamitzvot tomorrow.